Hello and welcome back to Dead Pedal Garage. Last week I did some minor detailing on this Miata, which I've been intending to sell for a while now. I go back and forth between keeping and selling it, but right now I'm in the keeping it mindset. I want to work on a bunch of the small details to make it nicer than it already is, and then we'll see about how I feel after that. I want to show you guys some of the old video that I have of how it was when I got it and what I've done to it up to this point to get it to where it is. So I'm going to get to it. So I found this car for $200, and after some shrewd negotiating, I paid a whopping $100 for it. And by negotiating, I mean I showed up to get the car willing to pay the $200. The guy wasn't able to meet me and knocked $100 off to come back the next day. It was sitting in a shed for years before I got it, and it was filthy with a broken automatic transmission, destined to be a parts car. After a quick look, I decided I could bring it back and save it from the scrap pile. So up first, I needed to borrow the soft top latches from my other Miata, which I call the Mini Mayhem. And with the top closed, I could give it its first wash in probably over a decade. I took a chance and also went ahead and clay barred the paint as well, knowing I could get this car running. I used distilled white vinegar in a spray bottle with water to dilute it a bit, which helps kill the mold and get rid of any smells. I just spray the full dirty interior down with it. Is your center console this gross? If so, do some poor guy 20 years from now a favor and clean it out. And after the vinegar treatment, it was time for a lot of vacuuming. I used an old leftover spray bottle. I think it was wheel and tire cleaner. I just filled it with soap and water, and I used that to clean the floor mats. Then some vinyl interior cleaner and protectant brought the interior back to life. A few weeks later, I made a junkyard run and returned with all the missing small parts that needed to be replaced. The stud holding this Frankenstein nut on was bent, so tape will protect the threads while I bend it back with some vice grips. And this one is missing the nut, but that's an easy fix from the inside of the trunk with a spare nut that I had laying around. A friend of mine had a red fender on a parts car, so I decided to throw that on the Mini Mayhem and take the brilliant black fender off of the Mini Mayhem to put onto this car to save time and money painting. I was also able to get the tail lights, rear finish panel, and a better bumper from a parts car that a friend of mine had. That parts car also had everything I needed for the manual transmission swap, and I managed to lose all the video on that. But up next is all of the video footage I did manage to keep of the manual transmission swap, along with any of the engine repair. I had to remove the dash for easier access to the pedals, the transmission computer, plus it was a good way to clean a little bit more. Unfortunately, that's all I got for the transmission swap. But I did manage to get it going, with the only issue being that it has to be in neutral in order to start. And you don't have to push any of the pedals in order for it to actually start, which does trigger a check engine light, which I would like to correct these things at some point. This is the first round of parts used to get it running, and I have the parts laid out for the individual coil swap, but I ended up using the factory setup from the Mini Mayhem and putting the individual coils into the Mini Mayhem. And with the valve cover off, you can see it looked pretty good in there. I also disassembled and cleaned all the hydraulic lifters. If that's something you're interested in seeing a video on, because I could do a whole video on that, comment below. And that's it for the engine repair footage that I have. But along with the spark plug wires and spark plugs and timing belt and water pump, I also ended up replacing pretty much every gasket from the head up. So the head gasket, the valve cover gasket, the timing gasket or cam gaskets, the front and rear main seal, all of the vacuum hoses, both belts, both serpentine belts, the radiator, all the radiator hoses, and the heater hoses, and the brake master cylinder. So there was a lot more to do than what I was actually able to show in the footage. And I have no video of any of the undercar repairs, but I did end up having to replace in the front, the wheel bearings and hubs, the brake rotors, brake calipers, the hoses, and of course the brake pads. And then both the upper and lower ball joints had to be replaced. Inner and outer tie rods had to be replaced. And then on the front and back, I threw on the cheapest set of coilovers on eBay. They're terrible. I wouldn't recommend putting them on there, but it was cheaper than going through and replacing the factory stuff that was rusty and busted and no good. And the back also got new brake hoses, new brake calipers and pads and rotors. The The wheel bearings and hubs also had to be replaced, as well as the actual axles on both sides. And that was about it on the back. And after all that, it was ready to go up for sale and move on to make someone else fall in love with a Miata. But I haven't had any serious or fair offers, so I just ended up deciding to keep the car. And there were some more changes to come, which I'll go over in part 2 next week. So thanks for watching.